Hello, everyone. Jonathan Valentin here, author of the book, The Return of the King. I am so excited to talk to you guys today and have the ability to just share with you guys chapter 7 of The Return of the King. Chapter 7, The Myth of Balance. For most of his life, James believed that the key to a successful life was balance. It was a word he heard constantly. Work-life balance, emotional balance, financial balance, even spiritual balance. The concept seemed reasonably on the surface. A balanced life sounded stable, it sounded healthy, it sounded reasonable, and like many others, James spent years trying to achieve it. He tried to balance work with personal life, ambition with rest, discipline with enjoyment, and independence with relationships. But the more he pursued balance, the more something fell off. Balance, he realized, assumes that every responsibility carries equal weight. But life does not function that way. Some responsibilities are heavier than others. Some priorities cannot be negotiated. Some decisions require a man to sacrifice one area of his life to protect another. Balance, as it was commonly described, did not account for those realities. It suggested that every part of life should receive equal attention. But James knew that equal attention was not only unrealistic, it was impossible. When a child is born, balance disappears. When families faces crisis, balance disappears. When responsibility demands sacrifice, balance disappears. Life is not balanced. It is ordered. James did not arrive at this realization through theory, but through experience. There were seasons where work demanded long hours, seasons when family required his full attention, and seasons where personal growth demanded discipline and focus. Trying to balance everything equally often means failing at the things that matters most. Over time, he began to suspect that the language of balance itself might be misleading. Not because it sounded wrong, but because it ignored the reality of priorities. Priorities acknowledge that certain responsibilities must come first. And when something comes first, something else must wait. This idea was uncomfortable. Modern culture prefers flexibility. It values options. It encourages the freedom of rearranged priorities based on preference or convenience. But James was beginning to see that a life without clear priorities eventually becomes chaotic. If everything matters equally, nothing truly leads. And without leadership, responsibility begins to drift. He noticed how this confusion affected many men. Some try to be everything at once. They pursue professional success, maintain relationships, develop hobbies, stay physically fit, cultivated friendships, pursue spiritual growth, and still attempted to preserve personal time. The effort was exhausting. And eventually, something gave. Often, it was responsibilities that required the most sacrifice. Family, spiritual life, long-term commitments. These areas demand patience. They require discipline. They involve consistent investment without immediate reward. And in contrast, other areas of life offer quicker validation. Career advancement brings recognition. Entertainment provides pleasure. Social media offers attention. When priorities are unclear, immediate rewards often take precedence. James realized that balance often became an excuse. A man might claim he's trying to balance everything, when in reality he is avoiding the difficult responsibility of choosing what matters most. Balance allows delay. Priorities demand decision, and decisions reveal character. As James reflected on the men he respected most, he noticed a consistent pattern. None of them lived perfectly balanced life, but all of them lived ordered lives. They knew what came first. Their faith guided their decisions. Their families shaped their schedules. Their responsibilities influenced their ambitions. Their priorities determine how they spend their time. Everything else arranged itself around that structure. This way of living stood in stark contrast to the cultural pursuit of balance. Balance attempts to keep everything equal, while priorities recognize that some responsibilities carry greater weight. A man who understands his priorities does not feel guilty when he must sacrifice certain opportunities. He understands what he is protecting. He knows what matters most. James remembered a conversation with an older mentor who had lived through decades of responsibility. After listening patiently to James describe the pressure of trying to maintain balance in every area of his life, the man simply said, "You're chasing the wrong idea." When James asked him to explain, the mentor replied, "Life is not balanced. It is prioritized." The statement was simple, yet it stayed with him. Over time, James began to see how deeply these principles shape stable lives. A man who prioritizes his spiritual alignment builds decisions on a moral foundation. A man who prioritizes his family invests time and energy where it matters most. A man who prioritizes responsibility develops discipline. But a man who prioritizes approval eventually becomes controlled by opinion. The difference between those paths is not subtle. It determines the direction of an entire life. He also realized that priorities reveal a man's value more clearly than his words ever could. A man may speak passionately about what he believes, but his priorities reveal what he truly honors. Time reveals priorities. Sacrifice reveals priorities. Consistency reveals priorities. James began examining his own life through this lens. Where had he placed his priorities? Had he allowed comfort to take precedence over discipline? Had he allowed distraction to take precedence over responsibility? Had he allowed public perception to influence decisions that should have been guided by conviction? These questions were not easy to answer. Like many men, he recognized that he had occasionally allowed secondary priorities to interfere with what mattered most. But awareness created opportunity. If life is truly ordered by priorities, then realigning those priorities can reshape the direction of a man's life. James began to understand that masculinity itself depends on this clarity. Without clear priorities, a man becomes reactive. He responds to the loudest voice, the strongest pressure, or the most immediate desire. But with clear priorities, a man becomes stable. He knows where to stand. He knows what to protect. He knows what he must refuse. That stability does not remain isolated. It affects everyone around him. A family feels secure when a father understands his priorities. A community benefits when men act with conviction rather than confusion. Children grow with confidence when they witness consistency in the decisions of the man guiding them. James realized that restoration of masculinity requires more than arguments or cultural debate. It requires men to rediscover their priorities. Not priorities shaped by popularity, but priorities anchored in responsibility. Responsibility to God, responsibility to family, responsibility to truth, responsibility to future generations. These responsibilities cannot be balanced equally with every other desire. They must lead. Everything else must follow. Once a man understands this order, many of the cultural debates surrounding masculinity begin to lose their power because the man is no longer reacting to opinion. He is responding to responsibility. And responsibility does not require approval. It requires faithfulness. James now understood something he had observed for years but had never fully articulated. The most stable men were not chasing balance. They were protecting priorities. They were willing to sacrifice comfort, convenience, and even popularity in order to remain faithful to what mattered most. That kind of discipline is rarely visible. It rarely receives recognition, but it builds something far more valuable than attention. It builds order. And order is the foundation upon which strong families, strong communities, strong civilizations are built. James understood now that masculinity would not be restored through performance or argument alone. It will be restored when men rediscovered the courage to order their life according to responsibility rather than comfort. Balance had once sounded appealing, but now he saw it clearly. Balance was an illusion. Priorities were reality. And a man who understands his priorities will always stand steadier than one who spends his life chasing balance. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. My name is Jonathan Valentin. I'm the author of the book, The Return of the King. And today I'm presenting to you guys chapter 7. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with somebody you know. Comment if you like this chapter and what spoke to you the most. I'll see you on the next one. This was chapter 7, The Myth of Balance. The Return of the King by yours truly, Jonathan Valentin. See you on the next one.